As a result of the passage of the Voting Rights Act, we brought a couple of important pieces of litigation I wanted to mention to you. One was the law, which is mentioned in the bio, not quite accurately in the bio, but it was a lawsuit to reapportion the state legislature and the congressional districts. The way they would, we call it gerrymandering, the way they had drawn the districts, it put large pockets of black people into sections with a lot of white people, so they couldn't get enough votes together to get people elected. It's called gerrymandering, and it's not legal. So we brought this lawsuit, and we successfully got the congressional districts reapportioned, and so that there's one district that always has a black majority in it, and then the legislative districts as well. And then in 1966, a school teacher from Holmes County, Mississippi, by the name of Robert Clark, decided to run for House of Representatives, the Mississippi State House, and it took 4 lawsuits to get him seated. The first lawsuit we filed on behalf of Bob Clark was to force the county clerk's office to list his name on the ballot. He first initially refused to list it, so we won that lawsuit. Then the next lawsuit, the registrar of voters refused to count and certify that Bob Clark had got the most votes. So we had another lawsuit and forced them to certify that. And the results went to the Secretary of State. The Secretary of State refused to declare Bob Clark the winner, refused a certificate to say that he was the winner. Third lawsuit against the Secretary of State. Finally, I thought it was all over, and on this day when the legislature was going to open, I accompanied Bob Clark to the state capitol. We got there about 9:45 because we knew the legislature always started at 10 o'clock in the morning. And all the doors, every single door in the Capitol was locked. What they had done is that day, the night before, they had notified everyone that they were going to start at 8 o'clock in the morning. But they didn't tell newly elected Representative Clark about it or me. So back to court, got a court order, and I accompanied federal marshals who came down, and forced them to open the doors. Bob Clark was seated. And as part of the realization of the dream, I'm still doing some work in Mississippi. I'll be there the first week of February, but I was there last year. They had a reception one night. They wanted members of the ACLU of Mississippi had this reception, sandwiches and so on, for me to talk to the members of the legislature, talk about some of the history of this, because some of those folks weren't there around in the 60s. And Bob Clark wasn't there because he's retired, but his son, who's a member of the legislature, was there. And 22 other African-American members of the state senate and House of Representatives were there. There were other black members too, but they weren't there. Mississippi today has more black elected officials than any state in the country. So there is marching pays off. One more march I wanted to tell you about. Time is running out. And you probably all, or most of you, maybe not real young folks, know the name James Meredith. He was a young black college student in Mississippi in the late 1950s. He went to Jackson State College, which was the all-black college in Jackson. And he decided he wanted to go to the University of Mississippi. It was a better school at the time. And had more opportunities and so on. And he applied, and of course they wouldn't take him. They didn't allow blacks to go in there. The lawsuit was filed not by me, it was filed by the NAACP, actually by a great woman, Constance Baker Motley, who's now a federal judge in New York, an African-American woman on behalf of the NAACP. And it took years of litigation, back and forth, the trial courts and the Court of Appeals, and finally they had final orders ordering the state of Mississippi to allow him to go in. The governor then, Ross Barnett, a distinguished racist, if there ever was one, he gave orders to all of the county sheriffs. He wanted them to go to Oxford, Mississippi, where the University of Mississippi is. Bring your rifles, he said, and we've got to keep them from bringing this guy into the school. I mean, the governor of Mississippi ordered people to come there and provide armed resistance to a young black man going to college. I mean, the height of idiocy. That idiot is now dead, mostly. President Kennedy responded properly, I think. He federalized the State National Guard and asked them to be there. He sent 100 federal marshals, U.S. marshals there. In spite of that, in spite of the presence of some deputy attorney generals from Washington trying to keep the peace, there was a lot of fighting, gunshots, a couple of people killed. These Yahoo sheriffs couldn't resist trying to shoot someone. And it was a very bloody matter, but finally James Meredith was escorted into and admitted to the school. He graduated from the University of Mississippi, and in 1967 he decided that he wanted to come back and sort of remind people of what happened. And so he announced he was going to conduct a march against fear. He was going to start out in Memphis, Tennessee, which is right at the Tennessee-Mississippi border, at the top of the state, and march by himself down the state highway to Jackson, Mississippi. People thought he was a little foolish to be doing that, but we watched, and I called him and told him that, you know, if he had any legal problems, we'd be available. Just call the office in Jackson, and I'd have a lawyer up there right away. Well, he started out on one day, and the very next day, he crosses the Mississippi, and he gets shot by someone hiding in the bushes, and is hospitalized. And that so outraged everyone else that the march against fear became a real march. Dr. King came in from Atlanta, where he was then working and living, head of the Congress of Racial Equality. Floyd McKissick then came down from North Carolina. NAA people were there. Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party. Stokely Carmichael joined the march. It was on that march that he gave his famous Black Power speech halfway down in the march. And the point of the story is I'm often asked, like, what kind of a person was Dr. King? Well, I didn't spend an awful lot of time with him, but something happened during this march that indicates the sort of the humanity of this man. In addition to being a great speaker and a great leader and a great minister, but the very humanness of the man. When they got close to Jackson, they were 2 days outside of Jackson on the 19th of June, and we had a meeting. We meet every night, and I would attend the meetings as the counsel for the marchers. Someone said, you know, 2 days from now is the anniversary of the killings of Cheney, Schwerner, and Goodman. Why don't we divert the march and go over to Philadelphia, Mississippi, where the killings happened, and have a memorial service for those 3 young civil rights workers who were killed 3 years earlier.